see a lot of familiar faces out here, and some of my past talks, the one about the United Airlines crash and the railroad stuff. And I am doing a talk the 20th up in Torrington about railroad disasters and derailments. I was on the go team, which means they called you up when they had a landslide or a flood and that. So I'll be up there the 20th in Torrington to talk about that. I want to thank Robin and Susie. They've given me so much help on all my topics that I look up. The United Airlines crash that happened in 1935 out there. On the railroad stuff, the Albany. I'm always picking their brains. How do I find this? Or where do I find this in the archives over here? They're just super with helping me out on all my research and that. Today's topic will be mainly about Sunrise. I got affiliated with it knowing George Siemens. George Siemens was the state archaeologist when I was doing construction work up on the Powder River sub and that. Anytime we found a bone in that, we'd have to call him up. And I'll tell you a little bit of story about it a little bit later on in this presentation. But that's how I got involved here. This was probably 2000, right around 2000, 1999. I got to know George Siemens real well. And him and I became pretty good buddies and stuff, and we did a lot together. And on the different disasters I had, Kellyanne, Nevada, I called him up to come down and look at some stuff there and different work I've done on the railroad. Sunrise, Wyoming, and Shaps. There's so much to talk about at Sunrise. You got the geology, paleontology, mining history, history of the CF&I company, historic buildings, anthropology, cultural, people and families of the past from up there. Dr. George Friesen, I got several of his books up here. The Friesen Institute was named after him over there. He passed away, and he was really instrumental in the Sunrise mine, the Paleo-Indian Red Ochre Mine. George Siemens, and even a guy named Larry Soto, I'll talk to you about at the end of this presentation, local from up there. But the thing that holds it all together today is the archaeology. We believe that this will become a World Heritage Site eventually because of the importance of it and the age of it and that. This kind of shows the YMCA building. This was the first YMCA built in the state of Wyoming. It was financed by Rockefeller Jr. He paid to have that building put in for the mine workers, and he paid for the hospital to go in Sunrise up there. So that's located at Sunrise, Wyoming. Right now, we're trying to rehab it into a cultural center, museum, and artifact storage place for all the stuff we're finding up there. And there are different programs I'll talk about. SHAPS. SHAPS is Sunrise Historic and Prehistoric Preservation Society. I belong to it. I was on the board. I just stepped down on the board on it, trying to fulfill other things I need to do, but still heavily involved. I did the website for SHAPS, shapps.org, and it tells a lot of this history. We're revamping it right now to where people can do membership on it and things like that. And our main goal is to preserve, protect, study, and share the history and prehistory of Sunrise and the surrounding area. You notice the red ochre hand? That was done with red ochre. And the new Sunrise Point, the Sunrise projectile there, that's an actual artist rendition of the new Sunrise Point. And I'll get into more of that on through here. SHAPS is a Wyoming nonprofit organization, and they wanted to keep it all nonprofit up there. The YMCA has been donated to it, and we're trying to buy the Red Ochre Mine site and that other stuff. I put some handouts there. Some of that stuff's in there if you want to take it home, any of these handouts. Dedicated to preserving the heritage of the historic CF&I mining town of Sunrise, Wyoming, to include the archaeological Red Ochre Mine dating back some 14,000 years or further. SHAPS is also preserving the history of the families who live and work at the town of Sunrise through its oral histories program, recording and documenting their stories. The families living there include the Italians, Greeks, Irish, German, French, Austrian, Hispanic, Swedes, Syrian, Lebanese, Japanese, Scandinavians, just a multiple mixture of people that all got along good together up there and lived in the company mining town. The Pride and Joy of Shabs is the first YMCA building built in Wyoming at Sunrise in 1917. It's a labor of love restoring this magnificent old structure to its original charm, converting it into a museum and cultural learning center. So now, you guys know what an alluvial fan is? How many people here know what an alluvial fan is? Alluvial fan is where, this is the alluvial fan here. It's where all the sediment has come out and buried the area throughout centuries and years. So there's a famous alluvial fan just west of us here. Does anybody know what it is? It's the gangplank. It's where Dodge found to put the Union Pacific over the Rockies. He finally found that course over there. It's called the gangplank. But that's an alluvial fan there, in that it made a steady, easy grade to get over the Laramie Range here. So let's say that there was a town of Paleo Indians down here before the alluvial fan came. The alluvial fan come and just buried it and buried it and buried it throughout years and years. So how do you date this, and how old is it? This is up at Sunrise. This is the last excavation we had done. We got excavations going all over up there. You can see all this sediment that's been brought through the years. Not much was found here. We get another layer that's been brought down with rocks and heavier debris. And then it got back into another clay layer. And down here, we're starting 12 feet down. We're getting into a lot of artifacts at this location. And we've got that whole canyon to go and try to figure out where they live and try to get exact carbon datings. So radiocarbon dating, also known as carbon-14 dating, is a method used to determine the age of organic material by measuring the remaining amount of radioactive isotope carbon-14, which decays at a known rate. So we're doing this. We've got several radiocarbon dates and carbon-14 dates up there. But there's newer methods that are coming out to determine the age. If you want to find, we're trying to find a fire pit. We're finding all sorts of tools and projectiles and stuff 12 feet down. But we're trying to find fire pits and where an actual campsite was, or find bone there, because then you can get really good dates off of bone or off of charcoal fire pits and stuff like that. Another form of dating that we're doing there, and on further in here you'll see it, but it's OSL dating. It's optically stimulated luminescence. And the dating provides a measure of time since sediment grains were deposited and shielded from the light of the sun. So when the sun hit this ground, then years later, dirt came washing down over it. And then that was another date, and that's another date. So this is a way to measure that date, is this OSL dating. And you have to do it in the dark at night to get that. So you want to uncover the ground and get the material to where it doesn't see any sunlight, and then you take and date it. I'm going to go through an archaeological timeline of our area here and that. So you can see AD stands for the Latin phrase Anno Domini, which means in the year of our Lord, and that's over here. So we're talking about before Christ and AD. And BC and BP is before present time. It's from today's date. Actually, it's from 1950, that direction. So that's how they date that, where BP you see, or BPE is before present era, and is set in 1950, as this was close to when radiometric dating began to be used. Therefore, a date like the Galt, Texas site, I got a brochure on the Galt, Texas site up here, is 16,000 BP, which means 16,000 years before 1950 AD. In other words, 14,050 BC. That's one of the oldest sites in America where they're finding paleo artifacts and stuff like that. So now you see the Paleo-Indian era is here. So that'd be the Galt site. It's the Sunrise site, Folsom site over the Colorado state line. Here you got the Folsom site. And then you got the Archaic, which is 8,500 BC back to 8,000 years. You got the early Archaic, middle Archaic, late Archaic. You got the transitional, which is a lot newer time frame. And this is just kind of for us out here in the West. You've got other times like the Mississippian and these different other areas. So it's what I'm going to go off today and try to teach you about this area and that. Maybe. Are you in it? Oh. So this is the Galt, Texas site. And it's really an amazing site on the stuff that they're finding here, the carved rocks, the different objects, tools and that they've got at the Galt site. That's Galt, Texas. And if you want to get a brochure, you can look at later up here. So that's back 16,000 BP. Then you got the Lake Bonneville flood. I don't know if you guys know about Lake Bonneville flood. That was 12,000 BC when the Bonneville flood busted loose and went north into Idaho. It cut the Snake River Canyon channel and all that. When Lake Bonneville reached its bounds, 12,000 BC, 14,000 years ago, it breached a place called Red Rock Pass, which is north of Dalton, Idaho, and south of McCammon, Idaho. It breached there at Red Rock Pass. And if anybody's driven along the highway over about Twin Falls, between that and on to Boise, you'll see these big boulders out there all over covering the ground. And that's what was created by the Bonneville flood. You still in it? So this is Lake Bonneville. Went almost all the way down to Arizona. Whoops. Did you change it or did I change it? So this is Lake Bonneville. Went over into Wendover, up into Idaho, Lake Bonneville. It covered this whole area. This is the Great Salt Lake today, right here. So that's showing the Great Salt Lake and what it used to be. The Great Salt Lake is only like 30 feet deep now because it's reaching the end of the sediment. And you got the Bonneville salt flats over here and now and that. So if you, so this is Ogden, Utah. One more. And this is the old Lake Bonneville shoreline. If you guys have driven down I-15, you've seen the shoreline up there. Whoops, are you flicking it? I'm not doing it. So you can see the old Bonneville shoreline off of I-15 over against the Wasatch Hills over there. I got the opportunity. I've had such a privileged life being able to do so much on Union Pacific Railroad. And I got to do a LiDAR survey of the Great Salt Lake, the causeway, and all that. And I was in this helicopter doing that LiDAR survey, and see these little islands out here? Those are all islands that was in old Lake Bonneville. And this is on the west side of Great Salt Lake, the Salt Lake itself. So if you look out over there, and I'd never seen this before on the ground, but when I got in that helicopter, you can see these islands all over out there. It was the shoreline of Lake Bonneville. So that's the Bonneville flood. That gives you a better view of it. So let's talk about the Columbian mammoth sites. They became extinct 10,800 years, 800 BC. So that's 12,000 years ago. This is what it looked like out there. And this is when the Paleo Indians were there. And the Folsom Indians, or Paleo Indians, we had the Columbian mammoth around this area here. So there's a lot of, I know Dr. George Prison found a tremendous site up there with the Columbian mammoth site where they had actually killed the Columbian mammoth. And they've got it, excuse me, we've got it on display up in the YMCA up there at Sunrise. But this is what it would have looked like. You know, we found sloth in caves and stuff like this. And this is what the Paleo Indians were living on and eating in that. Then you got the Coster farm site. And this is back in Illinois, but it was 9,000. I'm just trying to give you a reference to get in your mind what age we're talking about out here for Sunrise. So the Coster farm site, what was unique about the Coster farm site in Illinois was it was the first burial site where they actually buried a hybrid dog. And it was a ceremonial site. So they were domesticated dogs back then. And see if I can find the, sorry about that. So these people also appear to have buried their dogs. One was found at the site known as Stillwell 2, and 4 at the site called Coster, curled up in individual grave-like pits. Radiocarbon analysis of the bones revealed that they were around 10,000 years old, making these canines the oldest dogs known in America. It also makes these the oldest solo dog burials anywhere in the world. Ancient American dogs have a genetic signature not found in any other canines. So the signature from these dogs were different than today's canines here. There's a great podcast on the ancients about the first dogs. And that's a really neat one. If you do a podcast, listen to it about the Coster site. It's pretty amazing. So that's why I put this in, because that's pretty unique about the dogs. Now up here, the Blevins site, which is over between Fort Laramie and Guernsey, Blevins, George Zamans and his team went out and found the pits, these huge pits. It had gotten washed out by the river going by, the Platte and that, and the little gullies coming down through there. And they started finding these pits. They dug back in there, and these huge pits had all these bones in it. And then there was troughs going out from these bone pits, and they had jugs, and they would catch the marrow and the fat and the stuff when they did the bones. Wyoming is just, full of these neat sites, archaeological sites, historical sites. This is a Spirit Cave mummy. This is the oldest mummy in America, and it was found over by Fallon, Nevada. Excuse me, this is Nevada state line, and it was found here. Now they've got the Spirit Cave mummy. I need a drink of water. Excuse me. But the Spirit Cave mummy, the guy that found this site also found the Etna Cave site, which we'll talk about next here. Nevada Etna Cave. Etna Cave is out by Caliente, Nevada. I've taken George Zamans there and these others to look at it, but they found an old skeleton there. And they also found these stick figures here, which are kind of amazing. And they found these in 1950, these stick figures in that cave. But what they found was they matched up to the caves in the Grand Canyon. These stick figures were found in the Grand Canyon caves. So it's kind of like the same people that lived in Nevada, kind of probably 150 miles north of the Grand Canyon where the other ones were found. So it's kind of all the same people that were in that area. So this really puts it in perspective here. The Mayan culture, 18,000 BC, 250 AD. So that's the Mayan culture. So we're talking Wyoming here. We're talking the Mayans, the Incas, the Aztecs. Julius Caesar was 100 BC. The Parthenon was 232 BC. So we're talking ancient times up here in Wyoming. So here's where we got the Red Ochre Mine. So we're thinking it's beyond the Galt site, because Galt was Clovis and that, and I'll get into that here. So this is how we progress through time on projectiles, arrowheads, and tools and that. So you see here, this is the new Sunrise Point. And then this here's the Clovis point. You can see how technology evolves on down through time. So you can see this flute here. Whoops, let me back up. That was me. It wasn't Susie. So you see this flute here. That's how you know this is a Clovis point. So the more rudeness you get, or whatever you want to say, the worse they look is the older, and it's better to find the less sophisticated ones. So you can see that. So this is the Folsom, which is, see, here's the Clovis, 10 to 11. Here's the Folsom. So this was found just over the state line in Colorado at the Folsom site down there. And then again, you see how the flute has changed and gone up. So you got the Clovis point. It's got this shorter flute, and you get a longer flute. And then it goes on and on down through time. You see how it gets more refined. Boy, it becomes an art piece the newer you get. But we're not looking for the artistic ones. We're looking for the oldest ones. So you can see the difference between the Sunrise point and some of the newer ones back in the AD. These were like, you know, back 1300 AD. You can see how intricate they get as time goes down through line. So this kind of shows. Now these are all Powers 2, it's called, and I'll talk to you about it. These are all Sunrise. And we were able to get on the cover of the American Antiquity magazine for our site up there. And they made a special edition, American Antiquities, on the Sunrise site. So let me tell you, this is Guernsey, Wyoming. This is the Army Air National Guard, Camp Guernsey. Then we go over to Highway 270, which is up to Manville. You can go to Lusk, you can go up to South Dakota, that route. And this is the Hartville Uplift. And it's a significant geological formation. This is what did all the iron ore, all the copper ore and that. There's Wayland Canyon Road. I'm going to kind of take you around the area here to show you, get your bounds. That's the Haystack Range over there. You guys heard of the big fire that happened this year. Senator Harriet Hageman was born just on the other side of that Haystack Range, and her whole place, her parents' place got wiped out in that fire. Wow. I mean, just everything just totally burned. There's Hell Gap. You guys in archaeology know the Hell Gap point. It was found over there. Chicago Mine and the old town of Ironton. These are all CF&I mines. There was a railroad that came up through the Wayland Canyon. We're going back to Highway 270. So that was Wayland Canyon. And then over here is Hartville, Wyoming. So if you go to the end of the town of Hartville, Wyoming, that's the company town of Sunrise, Wyoming. There was a gate here. This was all company town. No alcohol was allowed here. That's the Glory Hole, Wyoming's famous Glory Hole, where iron ore was mined and shipped to CF&I mills in Pueblo, Colorado. It's a magnificent site up there. So this is the old Colorado Fuel and Mine industrial area. This was full of buildings and tipples and hoists and all sorts of machinery. And this is where the old CF&I family residential area was. This was all houses. There was a hospital over here, the YMCA. That's the one that Rockefeller built. Right here's, as you'll find out later, is where they found the Paleo-Indian Red Ochre Mine site. That hole you saw dug was right here. That was that last hole that we dug. We've dug all over trying to find the campsites. So that kind of gives an overview. The Glory Hole, the industrial area, the road going down to Hartville, the road going into Guernsey and that. One gentleman owns all this. His name is John Boyd, an amazing guy. He's the one that donated. They call him the Renaissance Man. He was one of the founders of Chugwater Philly. He had a ranch. His family had a ranch. west of Chugwater, and he owned a bunch of buildings here in town. He owned the Bell Building. He owned several buildings in town here. Quite an entrepreneur. You'd never know it. You always see him dressed in red ochre dust and Levi's, and he's always working. I went up there last week and was helping him at the Y do some stuff. And he was out. He must have had 50 tires and rims out there where he was changing the rims and tires. Really an amazing guy. He sold some of the mining claims, but he owns the Chicago mine, the Ironton, old town of Ironton, the Sunrise mine, and that whole area through there. He has all that. And he has donated the YMCA to SHAPS. So we own it now. He's donated it. And he might donate some other stuff depending on what tax write-offs he needs. But he's just a super great guy, and he loves this site. He bought it for the mining and that. But when he found out about the Paleo Indian site up there and how it's just going to expand history out there, he's starting to get over into the archaeological side more than the geology side. A remarkable man. I know Robin knows him. A lot of people here know him. Amazing. This is George Siemens, the Wyoming State archaeologist. Like I was saying earlier, I met him, the first time I met him was at Broadwater, Nebraska. I ran construction crews, and so I had about 3 scrapers and 4 dozers working this area. And I told him, anytime you work along the Platte River, anytime you find a bone, you got to call the archaeologists out, because you don't know what it could be. Somebody from the Oregon Trail that's buried there. It could be somebody, Indian site or a Paleo Indian site or a Buffalo Kill site. So the operator came up to me and said, man, he said, Ken, I hate to tell you this, but I found a bone. That bone was only that big. And I said, well, move all the equipment over to the next hill and start working it. And I'll call up the archaeologist. I called up George Siemens. Nice guy. This is him here. And I called him up and said, hey, George, I found a bone here at this site. And he said, can you have the equipment stay off of where you found the bone? I said, I've already got them moved over to the next ridge. He said, can you hold them off till tomorrow morning? I'll be there first thing in the morning. And he drove from Torrington, got there first thing in the morning. And he said, I gave him that bone. He goes, well, it's the toe bone off a buffalo. How in the hell can you tell that buffalo asking, And he said, this is a Buffalo Kill site. I said, okay. I said, whatever. Go ahead and do your business. He said, can I have about 20 minutes here? I said, you got the rest of the day. I got all the equipment off of here. 20 minutes later, he comes out with a bison skull and encased in plaster. And it just blew me away. Everything he said was just exactly like he said it, And it was within 20 minutes he had that cast in plaster, and it's up in the museum up there at Sunrise. So that's him. Really interesting guy. He's the glue, bringing fellow archaeologists and students into the fold of all aspects of not only Powers II, but also the historic Sunrise Historic and Prehistoric Preservation Society. He has dedicated over 30 years to youth programs, instilling an appreciation of archaeology, historic preservation, and hard work. That's my brother's hand there. We helping him, and my brother and I went out and goofed around a little bit. We came back and said, see what the heck happened when you guys go? That was a good Sunrise point that they had found that day. His students. He had a bunch of programs. He had a program called what was it called, Sandy? Expanding Environments. And he would take troubled children, or troubled high school kids, junior high school kids that were in trouble. He'd pay them for the summer to come dig and help him with his archaeological stuff. They learned so much. He had an 80% success rate bringing these kids that were troubled teens, and 80% of the kids graduated college. Wow. But he had his program, and he did this for 30 years. So impressive. He'd take them to New Mexico to his digs, Arizona, local kids, Torrington area and stuff. He'd find out ones that were in trouble and stuff, and he'd make them govern themselves. So they couldn't smoke or anything like that. One time they found a kid smoking, so he had a jury there. He said, now we have to shut down the programs if people see this happening. You kids, the judge and jury, I'm leaving the camp. You guys decide what to do. Unanimous decision. All the kids there said, vote him out of the camp because he knew the rules and he didn't do it, So he taught common sense to these kids, and the kids just love him. I've been to restaurants with him, and he's got 20, 30-year-olds come up to him and hugging him and saying, oh man, you changed my life. On this dig up here, this day, there's this gal working there. One of his kids that was a troubled kid. He said, that was the most foul-mouthed girl I've ever seen in my life. And when I went and talked to her, she was the most pleasant gal to talk to. And she went on and got 2 college degrees. Just tremendous. This guy's amazing. All these people up here are. And I don't have to say much about Dr. George Frizen, the Frizen Institute over in Laramie. Remarkable guy, 96 years old. He was up there at sunrise sitting in his chair, and these kids would bring up artifacts they found and stuff. And just up until the end, he was a remarkable guy, a Wyoming native, born up northwestern Wyoming. And if you go to my website, I've done a dedication page to him, and it tells about his life growing up and that. It's pretty amazing. But you don't have to say much about him. This is John Voigt. This is the owner of Sunrise, and he owned the Heinz building at one time here in town. And been one of the most influential figures in saving the town of Sunrise and this amazing site. John allowed Schatz to save the famous YMCA. John owns the town of Sunrise, town of Ironton, CF&I, Sunrise Mine, the old Chicago mine, along with the family ranch west of Chugwater. But that's the most dressed up you'll see him, and you'd never know, worth millions and millions. They call him the Renaissance man. He has a one-man band. If you ever go up to Chugwater to that restaurant there, about once a month, he'll be playing his one-man band there. Go dance to him. That's just how he is right there. Dr. Bruce Bradley, Emeritus Professor. Dr. Bradley has extensive experience with Stone Age technologies and experimental archaeological, focusing on the North America Southwest Great Plains, applying anthropological approach to the prehistoric Powers II site. This, along with his flint mapping demonstrations, have only added to the historic backdrop of Sunrise. If you ever get a chance, go up there when he's doing his napping. This is him at a napping demonstration up there. I was down at Renaissance Festival down in Colorado, the Larkspur, Colorado, that Renaissance deal down there. And they had a guy that were making actual bows and arrows. I said, Bruce Bradley? He said, everybody knows Bruce Bradley. He can make a Clovis point right now, look identical to a Clovis point, He's in China right now. He goes all over the world studying stone tool technologies and that. Amazing guy. He comes out and stays at the ranch. When he wants to get cleaned up on his way back to home, he'll stay at our place. He brings archaeologists from Brazil, from Uruguay, from Germany, all over the world. He brings archaeologists up to here. And you'll see, I'll talk a little bit more about them. That's him using a bone tool, doing his flint napping. Get up there if you ever get a chance. On your desk, you see a schedule of events that are going on up there throughout the year. And he'll be up there with his teams. Commodity. Okay, now we'll switch to Red Ochre. Finally, you said. Huh? Commodities. A commodity usually refers to raw materials: water, sugar, coffee, natural gas, copper, iron ore. Ochre. See the spelling? O-C-H-R-E or O-C-H-E-R. It's one of the oldest, or possibly the oldest, commodity known to man. Note 2 different spellings. Most archaeologists and artists spell it O-C-H-R-E, yet the American English Dictionary spells it O-C-H-E-R. So, it gets confusing sometimes, but I've always called it O-C-H-R-E, and archaeologists, artists, because artists use pigments in that. So what is red ochre? This is yellow ochre. a hydrated iron hydroxide. You got brown ochre. You got sienna ochre. You got umber ochre. This is red ochre that's found up there. Red ochre takes its reddish color from the mineral hematite, which is an anhydrous iron oxide. Purple ochre is identical to red ochre chemically, but of a different hue caused by different light diffractions properties associated with the greater average particle size. Both of these pictures were taken up at sunrise. This is a pile of ochre, of red ochre. And after it sits in the sun, and that turns a purple hue. And then this is the red, like back on the table. You guys can sample that back on the table. Just watch getting on your clothes. You can wash it with Tide soap and cold water. But once you get that, it looks like rouge, like a makeup rouge, and it's oily. It's got that red ochre up there's got a different consistency than you'll find anywhere. And they found it even back in mounds in Ohio, the red ochre from this site. So that was a commodity that was trading all over the world. So the extensive use of ochre, 500,000 years ago, primitive man needed only to find suitable rock and scratch or grind them. Adding water, he had paint. Adding milk, he had paint with a protein binder that bound it. This quartzite hammerstone found near the Danube shows a 500,000-year-old partial handprint of red ochre on a stone tool. This is over in the Danube. Red ochre is amazing all over the world. 285,000 years ago, the earliest known cache of milled ochre comes from Homo erectus site, seen here in the Rift Valley of Kenya. Here, archaeologists found about 70 pieces of ochre weighing about 11 pounds. So this is the first known mining site of red ochre. What struck me about this picture of the site's down here, what struck me about this picture is this looks like Wyoming. It looks like the Hartville Uplift. It looks like that area up there, which is, pretty amazing. Just when I put the pictures next to each other, I go, this could be Wyoming. The Nanan Desert has one of the harshest climates on the planet, but the people call it home. So why is their skin ageless and their hair ever so elegant? Centuries ago, the natives developed a curious tradition, a daily routine of coating their skin and hair with red ochre. Only recently, scientists have discovered that red ochre is an effective natural skin and hair sunblock. And they still do this today on that desert. They still coat their babies in it and coat themselves in it as a sunblock. Red ochre is a symbol of life. We find that prehistoric people regularly painted their bodies red, dyed their animal skins, coated their weapons, sprinkled the ground of their dwellings and mammoth kill sites, insect repellent, and that a paste of ochre was used for wound dressing and pain relief. The mammoth kill site up by Douglas, they found red ochre spread all around that site. Ancient people saw ochre as a symbol of life, in part because it's the color of blood, especially deep red menstrual blood. Some societies quite commonly associate the color red with creation, life, and fertility. About 34,000 years ago, a hunter-gatherer group buried 2 young boys who had physical conditions in elaborate graves with 10,000 mammoth ivory beads, more than 20 armbands, about 300 pierced fox teeth, and 16 ivory mammoth spears. Like other burials from around the Paleolithic sites, the bodies in Sungyar in Russia are covered with red ochre. The site is one of the earliest examples of ritual burials, and it was just covered in red ochre, this whole burial site. The Red Lady of Paviland. Red ochre is closely associated with prehistoric burial rites. The so-called Red Lady of Paviland was dyed with red ochre about 33,000 years ago. Discovered in South Wales, it was believed the skeleton was a Roman-era female. Later, it was found the skeleton was in fact a male hunter-gatherer or warrior during the last ice age. But they've always called it the Red Lady of Paviland, even though it was a man. The Spirit Cave mummy we talked about earlier is the oldest human mummy in North America, found east of Fallon, Nevada. Some sites have found turkey bones, like they did here, that was used for tattooing ochre into the skin and making tattoos. Petroglyph or pictographs. I took this picture in Nevada. See the carvings over there, the sheet, that's called the Tunnel 5. That's right off the railroad tracks out of California, Nevada. A petroglyph is derived from the Greek words petros, stone, and glyphian, to carve. And these are all over that area in Nevada. There's thousands of them on all the rocks they have them carved. People don't know why they did this. We've heard explanations from, they did this like decoys to bring in the bighorn sheep or the desert sheep and that, you know, and different things like that. It's just, nobody knows because there's no record of why they did these and why they did them in a big, huge area. Pictograph or pictogram is a combination of the two words picture and graph, where picture is derived from the Latin word pictus, to paint, and graph from the Greek word graphos, writing. This handprint is up in Wyoming above sunrise in a cave, and it's on the ceiling of the cave. This handprint is. That's one of George Zeman's pictures when he had to go research that cave up there. These are in Nevada. There's all sorts of them in Nevada. This here, George was pretty certain that this was a burial site of a medicine man. He had a site identical to this with exactly the same type of figurines here. He had to go, they were putting a highway through this, rerouting the highway. And in rerouting the highway, these were on there, so they called George to come look. And he actually found a medicine man laid out, and all his stone beads and his pipes were laying out on his chest and that, you know. So, and when I took him to this site, because this is kind of, I used to hike all over Nevada, and I found this site, and so I took him up there and asked him, well, what do you think? He says, you feel the calmness here? He said, I'm sure there's a medicine man here, he said. So it's kind of interesting, all this archaeology is. These are more sites. Let me go back to that one. These are rams running. And these petroglyphs are all over that area between Cedar City, Utah, and Las Vegas, Nevada. This is down by Moapa, Nevada, and this was probably about 30 feet up, like a sunburst in that. This one here was found up by that same cave with the handprint, and you can see these guys throwing spears at this. What do you think this is?
Buffalo.
People thought it was a buffalo until they see the claws. So it had to be a grizzly bear that was up there, you know? So that's found up north of there. That's done with that red ochre. Which brings us to this site in Sunrise, Wyoming, where 16,000 years ago, people were mining red ochre. This is the red ochre site before the EPA, or not the EPA, Department of Environmental Quality came through and covered the site because it was a mining site, so it was a mine reclamation. So they covered this site, but these pictures were taken before.
It's an unusual site. First of all, it's the only paleolithic red ochre mine in North America. It's a chance to learn something new. But in this site, we're finding a lot of paleolithic projectile points. Undoubtedly more projectile points out of this site than any other known site. It's a tremendous sampling. But the problem was, what were they doing up in the mine site? And then George Prison did some pretty close studies. Over the years, we had excavated several mammoth sites and a lot of bison kill sites and recovered projectile points from those sites. And you can tell from examining the points that they've been damaged from killing animals. And we got to looking at these points, and a lot of them were used points. In other words, these people were taking those points out to kill the animals and then deposited them up in this red ochre mine.
And maybe it's a place to give thanks to the animal spirits or the gods. So far, that's what it looks like, a ritual site, but it's probably much more than that. Ochre is a very special thing because they use it for coating bones when they bury the dead. It could be used as a hide preservative. It's used as pigment. This site is enriching the whole idea of clothes.
So you can see mostly all the projectiles we found there have got a chip on them or a broken spot on them where they've actually killed an animal. So the theory that they're trying to prove now is that when they killed a mammoth or killed something, they'd bring this to the Red Ochre Mine, take red ochre out, and as a ceremony, they bury these used points in that as a ceremonial thing. And they're finding more of that. And we found from 6,000 years to 16,000 years, we found Hell's Gap points there. We found Folsom points there. We found Clovis points there. We found 6,000 so far. It's just a tremendous cache of stone tools, stone projectiles, and all that. It's an amazing sight, as you can tell. Red ochre has been discovered at graves, ceremonial sites, on floors of Paleo-Indian sites, on bones of animals killed by Paleo-Indians. Red ochre is the color of blood, giving it even more symbolic significance for the Paleo-Indians. Red is seen in giving birth, menstrual cycles, and death, so red is very significant color. This was a poem written by a gal that grew up there in Sunrise. The poem written by a Sunrise native. For red is the color of Sunrise Mine. The trees are red. The sky is flaming red. Even the wind moans red as it passes by. Red was the hope of the miners bold. Red was their work and worth. And millions of tons of red ore poured forth from the great red heart of the earth. And Miss Charles Bass is the one that wrote that. And it's so fitting if you ever go up there and you do any work on the anywhere work around there, you are covered in red ochre. And you take a shower and it runs off you looks like blood going down the drain, you know. And it just gets on everything. Your tires, you just walk through the brush and you get red ochre on you up there. That's my brother and I. We first opened up this cave here. That's right at the heart of the Red Ochre Mine. And we dug up some artifacts out of here under the supervision of George Zeman's there. But you see how we're just coated in red ochre. You know, I mean, it's just, and some people really relish that and relish the feel of it. And if you go to Sunrise, you know, you can feel spirits there almost, you know, it's just an amazing place. But as far back in 1917, Colorado Fuel and Iron was telling and writing about Paleo-Indian red ochre mining around the Sunrise area. Below is a 1927 article about the mining. This is out of the bulletin. It's a Colorado Fuel and Iron bulletin that they did about the Sunrise Mine. Mining was done in the district long before the white man came into the country. At Chicago Mine, remember that was on the other side of the hill, an old stope 30 feet long was encountered in the course of mining. The entrance to this stope had been covered over and was grown up with brush and would not have been found except by mining out the ore. Some of the stone scrapers used in mining were found, and the scratches on the walls were showing plainly. The ore probably was mined for use as paint by the Indians. And this is back in 1927 and 1917. They wrote these articles. There were two different articles. So it had been operated for years and years. The amount removed from the stope was 250 tons. So that's how much was taken out of that over at Chicago Mine 16,000 years ago. So this is what a stope is. It's where they mine out between two different types of rock. That's a mining term, stope. Form of steps made by the mining of ore from steeply inclined or vertical veins. Powers 2, this is the chronology of Powers 2. You might have turned this up. I don't know. We'll see what it does. I put together a chronology of what led up and how it got its name Powers. See how it's spelled P-A-W-A-R-S, 2. This will tell a story about how it was discovered. Everybody hear it all right? Oh, wait.
You're in his way.
Everybody, welcome to the Red Ochre Paleo-Indian mine tour and to the Sunrise Mine. We're going to talk first about the Paleo-Indian Red Ochre Mine. George Ridden's going to tell you a little bit about the history of that, and then I'll fill you in a little bit on how we're proceeding with our research up here. Well, I guess my interest and Linda's interest and several others in this area here have been what is known as the Paleo-Indian Red Ochre Mine. But this seems to be a very special grade of red ochre that turns up right here. Chronology of the Sunrise Paleo-Indian site. A person cannot truly understand the significance of this Paleo-Indian site without first understanding the chronology of events leading up to today and the significance of this man, Wayne Powers. To understand Wayne's involvement in Sunrise, one must first go back to 1936-37. Archaeologist Frank H. Roberts of the Smithsonian Institution coined the term Paleo-Indian to describe the so-called Clovis peoples who were at that time thought to be the earliest humans in North America. In 1935 and 1936, Roberts was working at an archaeological site in northern Colorado. The site was located on the Lindenmeyer Ranch. This has since become known as the Lindenmeyer Archaeological Site, which is now referred to as the largest known Paleo-Indian Folsom site. At this site, a young Wayne Powers, along with his father, both avid artifact collectors from the Greeley, Colorado area, were volunteers helping excavate this site with the guidance of archaeologist Frank Robert. While there, the Powers mentioned to Roberts about an archaeological Folsom campsite they knew of near Greeley, Colorado. This later would be known as the Powers Folsom site, or today known as Powers 1. So at a young age, Wayne Powers was heavily involved with archaeology, collecting artifacts, learning about archaeology, and also sharing information with senior archaeologists. Therefore, it's so important to involve the younger generations to carry on the enthusiasm and learning of archaeology. In the fall of 1938, Wayne Powers got a job at Sunrise, Wyoming, coaching at Sunrise High School. During this time, he lived and lodged with the assistant mine superintendent, O.A. Rockwell's family. As can be seen by this 1941 newspaper article, he was a good coach, winning the Division B Conference Championship for the third straight year. During his coaching career, Wayne found this Paleo-Indian site right in the Colorado fuel and iron town of Sunrise. Without the knowledge gained from Frank Roberts and Wayne's self-taught archaeology, this site may have been left undiscovered if not for him and his persistence. During World War II, Wayne Powers enlisted in the Navy, moving to Washington, D.C., home of the Smithsonian Institute. Along with him, he took all of the artifacts he had found at Sunrise, yet all the years he spent in Washington, Wayne never took the artifacts to the Smithsonian Institution. Finally, almost 40 years later, around 1981, Wayne Powers went to the Smithsonian and talked with the director of the Paleo-Indian program at the Smithsonian Institution, the late Dr. Dennis Stanford. Dennis Stanford was another person at an early age with a love of archaeology, fostered by a childhood spent roaming the sagebrush-covered hills and valleys of Carbon County, Wyoming, for Native American artifacts. In 1980, I was at the Smithsonian working with another Wyoming man, Dr. Dennis Stanford. He's an old Wyoming archaeologist. And he became the Paleo-Indian curator at the Smithsonian Institute. Wayne Powers came into our laboratory and he showed us a collection of Paleo-Indian projectile plants that he claimed he had found along the railroad right away. He claimed this spot right here. And there is just about a fourth of Wayne Powers' collection. Yes, Smithsonian, the entire collection is at the Smithsonian in Milwaukee.
That same year, Dennis Sanford and Friesen came to Sunrise looking for the site that Powers had claimed to have found the artifacts at. Walking back and forth, the two were unsuccessful in locating the site due to the fact that when Powers was there, the railroad was up against the mountain, a considerable distance north from where the two men were looking. That same year, CF and I closed the mine down. In 1986, Powers went back for a class reunion and discovered that the site was soon to be destroyed by abandoned mine land reclamation project. Powers immediately called Dennis Sanford at the Smithsonian.
He called Dennis Sanford at the Smithsonian. Dennis Sanford called me and warned me. I managed to get a hold of the head of the DEQ and the governor and a few other people, and we got it stopped just in time. We decided at that time, after we took a little walk around and looked at the slope, and incidentally Wayne Powers took me by the hand and led me around over there and showed me exactly where he had collected all of his projectile plants, all of his artifacts.
George Friesen then went out with some archaeology students and did a thorough surface collection where they collected thousands of artifacts. Then Mike Stafford, not to be confused with Dennis Stanford, in 1990 prepared his master's thesis at the University of Wyoming, in which this turned into the first publication of Powers II in 2003. In 1986, archaeologists were shut out of the site due to the landowner dispute, not able to get back in until 2013, when John Voigt bought the property. John Voigt was and has been extremely supportive of the archaeological community. John is very interested in the site and Sunrise in general, and an amazing person to work with. Between 2014 and 2017, George Friesen, along with George Siemens, spearheaded the effort to salvage all the artifacts they could that had been eroded from the site. The July 2018 American Antiquity magazine gave Powers II site the cover of its magazine, showing some nice stone artifacts. George and Jerry Siemens, along with John Voigt, have kept the archaeology momentum going with various activities, groups, and fundraising projects, as can be seen in the following. However, much more help is needed for the future of Powers II. The Sunrise Historic and Prehistoric Preservation Society, or SHAPS, needs your help in finding support for this endeavor. New ideas to get some younger members to help with the heavy lifting, so to speak. If you know any younger people that could give one weekend a month from their busy schedule to help dig or do some site preparations, please contact a member of SHAPS. Thank you. This is one of the tours they do. You'll hear one of the.
Oh, that's what the television looked like, just what they saw. And this is a place here that there was only one phone when I grew up. It was in here in addition to the mine office. They had a phone. But what, if there was emergency or something and somebody called, they had the Y number, they had runners like us. They'd get a nickel to run clear across town and tell somebody they had a phone call. And then downstairs, there was a bowling alley. There's 3 lanes, and then you could make 5 cents a line by setting pins by hand. Now, they had leaks there, believe it or not. They came from Guernsey and places. You got 10 cents a line. So then the people on the lakes, the loser bought the soda pops for all the people there. And then they bought one for the guy setting pins. So you got to pay. Upstairs, there's a basketball court. There's a stage there where they had shows and stuff, boxing matches. There was workout stuff up there. And then there was a projection room. They showed silent movies, you know, and then they had their safety meetings in there, the CF&I, and there was a sewing room that the women could come in and sew, and there was teachers that would teach them how to sew. There was a library, and there was just all kinds of stuff to do there to keep us out of trouble. But some of us still did get in trouble. They had a gossip room. You just sat there and you could visit. Yeah, there sure was. Yeah. No, I'm too old.
That's Raymond Salvo. He's was born and raised there as a little kid. We do oral histories. We're trying to find all the old people that lived there, all of the kids that grew up there, and we do oral histories. We've got hundreds of oral histories. Now he's actually on the board also. Raymond Salvo is nice guy to talk to, funny guy to talk to, but he's talking about the why. Upstairs was a basketball court and a movie projector room. In the basement was a 3-lane bowling alley, and they had the pool room and library and all that in that building there. But this is the tour in those papers I got out there that tells the schedule of what's happening this year. There'll be a tour, I think it's the 27th of June, and hundreds of people come there and take the tour, and they take different people in these around the whole mine site up to the industrial area, through the mine, up to the glory hole and all that. And if you guys get a chance, haven't been there, you need to go there. It's a pretty interesting deal. This is Powers 2 today. There's the YMCA. That's that hole that you saw that gal down in from Uruguay or from Brazil. She was down way deep, and that was 12 feet deep. That's where they found a whole bunch. We've dug all over different spots here. There'll be a new excavation site this year. They'll bring in the archaeologist. This is where that Red Ochre Mine was, where you saw my brother and I digging back into the hill. It's all been reclaimed by the EPA now, and it's all covered and buried. But we're still doing dig. We did a dig here this last year. We're going to dig further up this year and just see where we run out of stuff. We're still finding, wherever we dig there, we find stuff. I mean, it's just amazing. Powers 2 today, over 6,000 prehistoric artifacts have been recovered from the site. And we're trying to get that YMCA developed where you can house all the artifacts there. And the artifacts from all over the area. We've got stuff from the Mammoth Kill site there. We got sites, stuff from the Fisher site, and it's going to be the collection area of that whole area up there, archaeology-wise, Oregon Trail-wise, Fort Laramie-wise. A lot of artifacts are in this building already. We're trying to get it refurbished and everything. Powers 2 today, world archaeological teams from Uruguay, Brazil, Germany, and U.S. have been involved in the excavations. That's been the past years. We got them from all over the world now that are coming up. This is her down the hole. These guys.
Archaeology at Sunrise. We have an organization, a 501c3 organization called Sunrise Historic and Prehistoric Preservation Society. What that society does is work to...
He was very, very excited about this project and saw a lot of potential, and he invited me to come and be here. And just being
true. It's about the site, and the significance of the site is, like I said earlier, it's a chance to learn something.
units. Pretty quickly, we ran into a spot down here where the mine disturbance is only about foot and a half thick. And underneath that is in-place sediments. It's exactly the material we're looking for.
So the
It's fine sediment.
We found no artifacts in this upper unit at all, but as soon as we got down into this gravel, we started getting small flakes.
Found a few artifacts. Most of them are flakes and
From
like
Brazil.
one or two bifacial preformed. We also collect the charcoals and soil samples so we can date them now. Beyond the point that is beautiful, it's a lot of information.
And something around here at that time, and we don't have any dates yet, but we hope to get dates out of the different sediments here.
This is that OSL. This guy's from Uruguay.
We are collecting OSL samples or luminescent samples because sometimes you don't have enough organic matter to date by radiocarbon. A good way to circumvent these problems is to collect OSL samples. You are dating the last event of exposure to sun. So all grains, all minerals that are in this wall, they were once subject to sunlight. Every time the sun goes up in the horizon, it zeroes this clock, let's say. The quartz grains have all the radiation that is trapped, put a duct tape, and sent to the lab.
And since then, we've gotten 3 dates, and they're all old. A couple 14,000-year-old dates, a 15,000-year-old date, and even one 16,000-year-old date. And that's older than Clovis. And Clovis, of course, has been flaunted through the years as the first people on this continent. That idea has now been pretty well disproven.
Every month we have talks. We do a talk every month up there at Sunrise or Hartville, depending on the weather and that. And these archaeologists from Brazil and Uruguay give talks. Amazing to listen to them. That guy you just saw doing the OSL dating, he came and did a talk about skulls. And the skulls he finds in South America and the skulls in North America. And the South American ones have influence of Australia and that type of Aborigines, whereas the ones in North America seem to be Asian, more Asian, and from that. So it's interesting to go to these talks and listen to these guys talk. We've had talks about that, about blue laser technology and how they're finding stuff with blue laser technology. The newly discovered Sunrise Point, presently confirming the date. So that's that one you saw. These are some more points from projectiles found. That's the Red Ochre site there. We've got it covered. And we're trying to dig to see how far up it goes and how far down. Up on top of the mountain here, there's several ceremonial rings up on top of that mountain there. Activities and events. We've got talks, like I told you. We've got young kids programs where they come out and do the recent archaeological digs, like for buttons and nails and different stuff from the old mine. And then we've got teenage group that comes out, and that was the expanding environments. They come out and do it. We have tours that we give of the glory hole where John Boyd talks about his knowledge, and he's really knowledgeable about the whole area. 2025, Shaps Alone with Troy Reichert's Sunrise Skilled Trade School will, for the 4th straight year, bring in high school students from Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Wyoming to continue renovating the historic YMCA building. So these kids are from all over the United States. They're high school. They can't be out of high school. They got to be high school kids. They apply to come to Wyoming, and we feed them and everything, and they come and do work restoring these buildings, whether it's chinking the brick, and we have professionals teaching these kids. And the Wyoming Contractors Association is also supporting us on this, and they're going to give them credit, like college credit, for doing this, coming from all over, like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Last year we had him from Ohio and all over the place that came up. George Siemens had his book being published, and it just came out last week. This is the new book about Sunrise, Wyoming that George Siemens wrote. And before George Friesen died, he said, I want you to write a book about Sunrise and about the Paleo-Indian artifacts and about this site. And so George Siemens named the book About. Really, it's a scientifically knowledgeable book on every aspect of what's happened so far up there. Tremendous book he's put together. And they're selling that now. So that's already out. Partnership with Eastern Wyoming College from Torrington. The Education, Tourism, and Archaeological Influence will be the only full-time archaeological department with a field school at Sunrise. So we've actually set up room for him in the basement of the YMCA for Dr. Steve Howard. He was from Galt site, but he's moved to Wyoming as a professor there at the School for Archaeology. And he's partnering with us, with SHAPS and with Sunrise to have classes there and schools there. Already did flip some going backwards. So that's the partnership with Eastern Wyoming College Archaeological, and it'll be the only one in the state. We're renovating the Y. We've got stuff going all the time up there. We had it re-roofed. We've got a lot of stuff done inside. DEQ's in there right now doing a lead abatement in the basement. And when they're done, then the construction will start on making college rooms there. We're trying to salvage one of the bowling lanes and then have an event where we have them do the old bowling and where they set the pins and stuff like that. So if you ever get a chance, go up there. The first ever girls skilled trades camp. This was 5 years ago now. And we had 12 to 20 co-ed. Now we've got co-ed classes. 4 of them were 12 to 20 kids come and do the work up there, being instructed by professions in the craft. As the boys, this is them doing different things. So this is the schedule of this year's events. And I passed it out. I got some more up here if any of you guys want to take them home. So June 15th and 20th, Troy Reichert's Skilled Trade Group is coming. That's quite a program, financed by Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight provided all the tools and everything for that. June 23rd to 26th, SHAPS Sunrise Field School. This is where Dr. Howard, Stephen Howard, archaeologist, will bring in students. This will be a 6 credit encompassing per credit college. This is the grand tour we have. It's going to be June 28th to the 25th. Hundreds of people come from all over, especially artifact collectors and stuff like this. There's presentations out there. There's talks. There'll be walking tour, the old time site, industrial area. Then we got Volunteers for Peace with Dr. Steve Howard. That's July 13th to the 27th. And that, I don't know if you guys have heard of Volunteer for Peace, but they're going to come and have a national field study at Sunrise. Then July 20th through August 9th, Bruce Bradley's going to have his teams come from all over the world, archaeological teams. I was looking to watch, sorry. I go overboard like all my talks. And then July 24th, 26th, International National Symposium. They're going to have archaeologists from all over the world come just to discuss this site and pick each other's brains about what's going on there. And then we have a money-making deal for Wyoming Gives. And what it is on that date, you call in and you donate, and your money is doubled. Your donation is doubled just for one day, July 10th. And on my website, they have a button you can click. Okay, that's all that, but I want to talk to you about this guy. This is Larry Soto. He was born and raised. You got papers on your desk. Larry Soto and Randy Meisner. You ever heard of him? Maybe you know who he is? Well, if you ever heard the Eagles band, you'll know who he is. They started a musical group out of Sunrise and Scottsbluff, Wyoming. They were called the Dynamics, and they played all over the country, but they were all local kids. They loved playing at Cheyenne here at the different venues. They played at Kearney, Nebraska. They played in South Dakota. They played in Colorado. They played in Kansas. It's quite a band that they started out. They were called the Dynamics. Their first gig was up there out of Torrington, a place called Little Moon Lake. I don't know if you've ever been up there. It was quite a restaurant, a golf course and stuff. So they were the Dynamics. They played their first paid gig there. Now, this is Larry Soto was one of the Sunrise boys. 3 of them were from Sunrise that started this band, and that Randy Meisner who played for the Eagles, played the Eagles band. He wrote this song because he grew up in the town and it all started to disappear. His high school got torn down because for tax purposes, CF&I came in and mowed down the old houses that they lived in and kind of took the life out of the kids. So I'll play this song. Larry Soto was raised in Sunrise, Wyoming. His father worked at the CF&I mine. He went to school there and spent his childhood in this mining town. You got the words in front of you.
I remember a long time ago when I was just a little boy, growing up in a mining town so far away, where the days were sunny and I sang all day. Autumn leaves fall, Friday football games, no time to let me rock and roll. Running down to the white plain and right to the hills. Sunrise, you're always home to me. Sunrise, oh sunrise, sunrise, you're always home to me. Sunrise, oh sunrise. Sunrise, you're always home to me. And now the years have gone by, and our school is gone, and they don't find no eyes no more. And our homes are no longer there. Breeze of sunrise, you're always home to me. Sunrise, oh sunrise, sunrise, you're always home to me. Sunrise, oh sunrise, sunrise, you're always home to me. Oh sunrise, you're always home to me. Oh sunrise, you're always home to me.
I love that song, and it makes you feel. So this, they later changed the name of the Driving Dynamics, and of course he wrote "Take It to the Limit," that Eagles song, and so that's Randy Meisner from Scottsbluff, and he was with the Eagles. I just had to throw this in because it's Sunrise history. They played venues all over the country, and you guys got copies of this there. I appreciate you guys for coming. Thank you very much. And if there's any questions, I'll take them. Like I said, the 20th, I'll be giving a talk up in Torrington, Wyoming, about railroad disaster, derailments, and railroad life. Growing up, I was on the GO team for Union Pacific, which meant if I was in Minnesota working and they called up and said, we have a flood in Nevada. I have to get on a plane and get there as soon as possible and run the crews. Or landslides in Oak Ridge, Oregon, and that, so, yes.
On your, the hole that you're digging, you're 12 foot down. Are you required to have boxes so it don't cave in on you?
No, not what we're doing. We haven't ever, needed that. I mean, I understand what you're saying, like you're digging a street where it's loose
Right,
gravel
right.
and stuff, yeah. And it's pretty methodical how we go down and stuff like that,
Okay.
and, we haven't never had a problem with that, no matter all of them. we've done. Yeah,
When the Paleo Indians were mining the site, were they mostly surface going down? You had the hole between the wheels. What was the mechanical technique used?
basically at sunrise, they just kept going back and back and back, taking the whole hill, and then they'd bury artifacts on up as they do that. And so you saw that first site, it was kind of a cliff where they had mined all the way back into there. Now over at the Chicago mine, they dug between the two fields and just kept digging back there about 30 feet, into that stone back there. Any other questions?
What are the lasers, the blue laser?
The blue laser?
Mention it.
The blue laser technology, what they're doing is they can look for elements, the stuff you make computers out of and stuff. They've got a blue laser technology. And what they've done is they went, and he was a paleontologist that developed this. What he did was, I do a program on this, but you have a fossil out here, a big, huge flying bird fossil. And looking at the fossil with our naked eyes, we see the bones and the structure of the bird's wings and that. This blue laser technology, what they do is when they shine this blue light on there, and they got a camera that takes pictures of this, they can see where the feathers went in the bird. They can see the feathers of the bird. If you're naked eye, you can't see it. They can see the muscle of the bird. They can see the pads on the feet of the bird. Looking at it, you just see the bones. But with that blue laser technology, you can see the pads like on a dog's pads of his feet. That way, this was a running bird. He ran. And this blue laser technology is so interesting, and they're just on the cusp of it now. But they put it on a drone, and in the middle of the night, they put this blue laser camera on a drone and flew it on over this area. Like in Utah, you have a lot of paleontology, dinosaurs, and stuff like that. And when they flew this out and mapped this area in a grid with this drone, all of a sudden, calcium, when blue laser hits it, like your teeth, or bone, comes out like a fluorescent yellow. It stands out. And so that drone that's flying over has a perfect shape of a dinosaur that you walk over, you can't see it or nothing else. But with that blue laser technology, it pulled it right out. It's just phenomenal. So he went, this guy's from Wyoming, and he went from that technology to doing archaeology. So he went over to Europe, to London, and they went to a museum, and they got these pottery pots. And they said, these are all Roman pots, And so he went with the blue laser and he filmed around that pot. And he said, I hate to tell you this in this museum, but these aren't Roman pots. These are Greek pots because they got Greek symbols. But you can't see it with your naked eye, but that blue laser showed the Greek symbols around it. I said, this is a Greek pot. And then they went in aiming as far as you can see the fingerprints of the person that made that pot. And they went to another museum in another country, and the same fingerprints were on the pots on that. So they had traded those pots, So it's just a phenomenal blue laser technology is getting so sophisticated. So the reason he came to Sunrise was he was trying to film the rock and the tools to see if these were done were carried somewhere else. And it also brought out what's that new mining they're doing for the screens, TV screens and your computer stuff, rare earth elements. So that blue laser pulls out rare earth elements and shows rare earth elements. It's for that. I do a talk on it. It's pretty fantastic on that. It's pretty amazing. That's that blue laser technology. It just blew my mind when I had that guy show us. Anything else? But there's so much stuff at Sunrise, so many of these presentations, so many of these talks, just amazing. I'm going to do another talk one of these days on the plane crash out there. Out at the ranch where that plane crashed, the first United Airlines crash was west of town here on our ranch. And when it crashed, it made world headline news. But we had a fire at the ranch this year. Of course, you guys heard of the fire coming from the bunkhouse. And it destroyed all of our fences and our 2 sections. It wiped out our trees, everything else. But what it did do was I've been trying to locate exactly where that plane crashed. And that fire burned off everything. So I went out there and I actually found where the 2 motors hit. And I got all the parts in the holes, all the plane parts that came off, and then it bounced up and then it went over. And now I had always, when I was a little boy, I'd go out in the pasture and Grandpa would say, "Where'd you go today?" I said, "Well, I went out to where that hill where the rose bushes were growing." He goes, "You know, there must have been some seeds in that airplane." And I said, "Airplane crash? What do you mean?" You know, the whole 12-year-old. And so I started researching that. These guys helped me a lot here. And Gerald Adams helped me, and several people helped me trying to find this plane crash because it got kind of lost in history. And the whole story is written itself. But I actually found a part this big of that plane that fire uncovered. And I found the ribs of the plane with that. And so every year somebody comes out to the ranch and said, "Are you Ken Hargraves? Did you write about the plane crash?" My grandpa was the co-pilot, or my relative was one that died on the plane crash, or this. And so the story just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's a fun story to tell. But get out of here. I heard this.
Work in the morning.
So here's some calendar events. Take any papers you want. Here's calendar events. Here's that sunrise song. Here's the different names. If anybody wants to become a member, there's membership forms back there for SHAPS. $30 a person or $50 a family. And that just helps finance all the stuff that's going on.